Hello, everyone, and welcome to PV Magazine USA Week 2025. PV Magazine USA is hosting the second edition of this annual multi-day virtual event. And this year, we're focusing on advancing the US solar and energy storage markets in the aftermath of the passage of the One Big Beautiful Bill this summer. I'm Ryan Kennedy. I'm senior editor at PV Magazine USA, reporting live here from Cambridge, Massachusetts, and serving as your moderator for the event. During this live conference, we'll bring together leading experts in the solar industry to discuss the most pressing issues in solar and storage in the US. The industry has undergone a massive year of change in the United States. With the election of Donald Trump came promises of an all-the-above energy policy, but legislative actions have proved that supporting solar build-out is not exactly part of the agenda. The industry now faces new challenges with tightened tax credit eligibility rules and deadlines, increased restrictions on imported technologies, and rescinded federal funding. Despite these regulatory challenges, the near-term and long-term prospects for solar look bright. Lazard's analysis found that solar's levelized cost of electricity beats the lowest cost fossil fuel for new build projects, even without tax credits. With electricity demand on the rise and solar capacity continuing to dominate project queues, the fundamentals remain strong. During the virtual PV Magazine USA 2025 week, we'll discuss ongoing challenges on how we're meeting the moment to accelerate build-out in a more difficult terrain. And during the 3-day event, each day we'll dive deeply into a key theme, including unlocking capital, that's today, navigating the US supply chain, that's tomorrow, and then day 3, looking at distributed energy as a solution. And once again, welcome to PV Magazine USA Week. Before we start with the program, I'd like to thank our sponsors, our lead partner, Create Energy, our platinum partner, Trinasolar, and our gold partners, Intertech CEA, Q-Cells, and REC Group. So let's get started with day 1. Today on day 1, we're focusing on unlocking capital. Solar projects are accelerating ahead against a backdrop of tightened deadlines for federal tax credit availability. Developers are prioritizing portfolios, structuring new forms of project finance, and accessing new sources of capital. Today, we'll examine how solar project developers are securing funds and improving insurance terms by increasing the bankability of projects, bolstering resilience, and ensuring effective long-term operations. From early development to operations, this session will walk through some of the industry best practices for ensuring project success. We'll examine how developers address project risks like extreme weather, including hailstorms and other weather-related risks. And we'll address how the industry can secure success both in the final years of tax credit availability and in the years beyond. In just a moment, we'll hear from our keynote speaker, Dean Solon, founder and CEO and president of Create Energy. We'll address Create Energy's approach to innovation, technical expertise, and a steadfast commitment to American manufacturing. Solon will share Create Energy's mission to engineer solar, battery energy storage, EV, and microgrid systems that are simpler, safer, and more resilient. After the keynote, we'll hear from Ethan Eli, product manager at Trinasolar. He'll deliver a presentation on the company's extreme weather resilient solar modules with this presentation entitled Conquering the Elements, Bankable Shield Module Technology. And then following a 10-minute break, we'll have our panel discussion, which includes experts from VDE Americas, enSights, Renew Energy Partners, and Sustainable Capital Advisors, extending our discussion on finance, policy deadlines, project bankability, and resilience. Thanks to all our viewers for joining us today. You can check the handout section for our schedule, and if you have questions, feel free to submit them via the Q&A session, and we'll try to address as many questions as we can during the session. Each day during the event, too, we'll be giving away a 1-year digital subscription to PV Magazine to one attendee. So make sure you're participating and paying attention. You could be our winner today. Now, with that out of the way, let's go ahead and begin with our keynote session. I'll introduce our speaker, Dean Solon. Dean Solon is a recognized leader in the renewable energy industry. He has over 3 decades of manufacturing experience, 2 decades focused on renewables. He's the founder, CEO, and president of Create Energy, which he launched in 2023 to provide American engineered and manufactured solutions. Solon previously founded Shoals Technology Group in 1996, which became the leading provider of electrical balance systems for the solar industry and had a successful public offering in 2021. Thanks, Dean, for joining us today.
Welcome. Thanks for having me, Ryan.
Really appreciate it. Yeah, so to kick things off, we'd love to talk about Create Energy. Create aims to make procuring renewable energy as easy as ordering from a McDonald's menu board. That's a phrase we've heard. Could you walk us through what that process looks like and what that ease of procurement looks like?
Yeah, if I could back up a bit,
sure.
Is when I was at Shoals, I was focused on eBOS. And then there's others who are focused in modules, others that are focused in trackers, and then the power stations and all the other things that go with it. And each one was optimizing for their own greedy good versus how all this stuff interplays with each other. So when I was, after I left Shoals, retired, a couple years later, I had all these thoughts that I wanted to be able to merge the module to the tracker, to the eBOS, to the power station, to the battery energy storage, and do it with the minimal amount of technical labor on a solar field. So how fast can we implement this stuff? And how fast can we remove all the failure modes that accrues all the nut, bolt, screws, torquing, retorquing, electrical torquing, just all the things that cause solar fields to require a lot of expensive labor on those fields. So the good thing with where I've been in my career, thank God, is I'm working on the modules, I'm building the tracker, I'm building the eBOS, next generation of eBOS, and I'm building power stations that I don't know if people saw, but I've collaborated with SMA. I'm going to start manufacturing their utility scale string inverters. So with that, the goal is we have a 50s menu board open 24/7, kind of we'll show up on our roller skates like a 50s diner. Literally, it's as simple as click what you want, and then days later, it's an Amazon Prime style of delivery of those products that are sitting in racks in key locations around the country, and just take what you want. We're not going to force you. If you want our modules, you need our trackers, you need our EPC services, or whatever other systems out there, just take what you like, right? We'll deliver it very quickly. And as you become more and more comfortable with it, we want you to buy the entire solution, but we're not going to force the solution on it. If you want the modules, great. You want the trackers and eBOS, okay, right? We're trying to make it as simple as possible. And my best analogy is, do you remember when these little puppies came with 3-year contracts and you hated AT&T and Verizon and T-Mobile, and the moment they took those contracts away, business boomed? I think solar is kind of in the same boat, because you're going to take these modules that are going to have to go on that tracker. Then you got to get a PE to give you a stamp that it works. And then you got to try to tie the eBOS to it, and then make sure all that gets to an inverter that has the right inputs and the right outputs and blah, blah, blah. And I'm just saying, I'm going to make this as simple as Legos. Order from the Happy Meal. You want the combo meal, you just want a hamburger, you want a fillet of fish, I don't care what you want. Just order what you want, and we'll deliver it. And it's all going to play nicely with each other, and it's designed for the minimal amount of labor, because across the board, everybody I talk to in the industry, the largest problem in renewables is scarcity of labor. And then when you can't find that labor, it's not very well trained. Not their fault, right? We got a bunch of kids have grown up with an Xbox or a PS5 controller in their hand. They didn't grow up with a screwdriver and a pair of side cutters and a crimper, right? So I'm not picking on that generation, right? That's what it grew up with. That's what it knows well. So how do we put high-tech devices in their hands and put more joystick feel of installation means and methods to where they can thrive and want to get out of the house and go to a solar field, go to a battery energy storage installation, go to an EV charging installation, right? And they wake up every day and they feel happy and productive, that they're not just sitting in mom's basement, you know, and trying to figure out what I'm going to do for a career. So it's help the people help themselves, but more importantly, remove as much O&M services off the systems as allowed. And literally nuts, bolts, screws, and all those things are the nightmare of solar installations.
Great. Yeah, so let's double click on that a little bit. What are some of could you walk us through like a specific example of an engineering solution where having it standardized makes it easier on the developer, makes it easier on the installer, and simplifies labor?
So for us, we'll get your site plan, we'll lay it out for you, right? We'll figure out what that involves. And then, did my camera go off? Am I still there?
We can still hear you.
Oh, all right. Sorry. It went away. I just want to make sure I was still there. You know, Wi-Fi gets a little stupid. But what we're designing the systems is the module has the integration built in of the mechanical and soon to be the electrical connection that attaches onto the torque tube. So you pick up our future module and it clicks onto the torque tube. And it's mechanically already locked on there, and it's soon to be electrically interconnected, right? So right now, if you look at how the solar field's built, process steps, you come in, you scrape the earth, you pound the posts, you pound the cab hanger posts or the harness host, the DC feeder posts, you put the bearings on, you put the torque tubes on, you put the module steel on, you put the modules on, you tighten them up, a crew comes, tightens them up, torques them out, marks them, another crew comes and does electrical work, another crew comes and cleans the mess. It could be up to 10 separate crews on the same roll. Yeah. I'm saying terrain follow it, torque tube and bearing assembly show up, drops in place, module clicks in place. And then we have a next generation VBOS we've designed where I'm getting an echo. Can you guys hear that?
Sounds good on my end.
Okay, sorry. Where once you install our eBOS with our monitoring equipment that's built into the eBOS, it's first of all, it's a 10-year warranty, which is unheard of in this industry. And if you open it, it becomes your warranty, not mine. So once you close either our combiners or our load break disconnects with our monitoring on there, never open it again. So as you drive past, it'll tell you by a light the status of its operation, whether it's operating, it's going to have a red, yellow, red light, right? Green, yellow, red, like stoplight. And that could either be transmitted wirelessly, it'll tie to your TCP/IP Modbus, or put somebody in side by side. Every time somebody walks past one of our devices, it reports its status to you. So you know the status of it a few hundred times a year if somebody's driving past it, right? It becomes almost second nature to look at your eyeball, look over at that combiner load break disconnect, see the light flashing, and know its status. So we're just trying to remove complicated assembly of the product. So we have minimal man hours of installation time and basically take low skilled labor and hit a home run installation. And once that installation is done, come with your Windex and wash and wipe the modules down. Now that's a lot of Windex. I'm, having a little fun here, but we want to get to the point where it's such a reliable system. When you do need labor, they'll know exactly where to go, what's wrong, and what product to bring with them before they even hit the O&M services of that issue.
Great. And with standardization, you have you have a smoother, simpler process. But sometimes standardization can raise some concerns about like flexibility and design. Do you see any kind of trade-off there, or how do you address kind of meeting a specific customer's needs?
So the sites we're seeing so far, from Florida to Massachusetts to California to Ontario to Pluto, we can use the same exact hardware across all of it with a minimal amount of harnesses in the eBOS, same exact load break disconnects or combiners, right? So we've simplified the installation. We'll do your site layout for you for the eBOS, and we've got it down to 2 or 3 harnesses, taking care of 90% of the work, right? So instead of having specific products having to go to specific blocks in the installation sequence, you have just boxes and boxes of harness A, harness B, load break this, tracker set up that, and then the only difference in the tracker side is literally the pitch of the tracker posts. But it's always the same torque tubes, it's always the same bearing. It's just everything has been standardized to the max, where it's basically Legos on steroids. And the kind of the way I'm looking at it is, you find a kind of a disgruntled barista in the morning, take him or her to the solar field, and by the afternoon, you have a very, very successful, productive installer on your team. You didn't have to go spend 5 years in trade school or have your dad's crimper and side cutters and, you know, have all this knowledge base that you want to keep in your head, right? It's just click things on, plug things in. Once wires are connected in the eBOS side, it's done. Never mess with it ever again. And the idea I always tell people is that we try to, I come from automotive. And in automotive, you did design failure mode analysis, and you tried to minimize potential failure modes. And I'm saying, screw that. I want to eliminate the failure modes. I don't want to reduce them. And what's the biggest failures in solar? Loose nuts, bolts, screws, right? Wrong torques, no torques. The crew wanted to get to the bar that night and put a bunch of torque marks all over things and left. We all know this happens. I'll be the one to say it. Most people won't, speak their mind. But I don't know any other way but to speak my mind. And from a pragmatic standpoint is, how do you deal with those failure modes, right? And design that feedback loop into the design cycle to get to the process, to get to the product, right? Where you're not trying to dumb it down where it takes no skill, right? But we want it to be a minimal skill level to be a hyper successful installer.
Great. And so you mentioned that you set up a partnership with SMA Americas, and you've forged some other partnerships. What goes into the process of selecting a partner, and what do you look for in a partner?
Everybody who I've partnered with, most likely I've been friends with since the late 2008, 10. I'll give you an example. I'm going to build battery energy storage products for Socomec. So we've partnered there. I've been friends and one of Socomec's biggest TV customers in my other business since 2005. Pretty good run. You got 20 years of history with somebody. You know that you've gone through the goods and bads with them, and you know they stand up and do what's right. So on the battery energy storage, I'm going to manufacture Socomec's products here in North America for them. Florian and Frank Bering. Everybody probably knows Frank in the industry. Frank and I have been friends since, 2010, 11. We've watched the industry come and go, and we're all still standing. And SMA is a great company with hyper reliable products. And Frank and Florian asked me to look into manufacturing their inverters for them, and I was more than happy to help them. So not only am I going to manufacture their string inverters, but I'm building power skids, string skids, that'll deliver fully installed or fully deployed on a skid, string inverters, distribution cabinets and other products, transformer separate, and try to kind of, I don't want to say idiot proof, but that's an old automotive term. You want to idiot proof the hell out of everything. I want to make it as simple and mistake proof as possible. So again, you could take somebody within a week or two, and they're wiring up, the high power devices at the power skid level with simple plug and play connector systems.
Great. So let's zoom out a little bit now and talk a little more broadly about the current state of the industry, if that's all right with you. We're seeing expiring federal tax credits coming over the next 2 years here. Do you see a potential project deployment cliff happening after credits expire? And how can the industry avoid this kind of cliff with installations and keep capacities running into the future?
Solar is the cheapest form of energy, hands down. Does it need all this government money? I'm going to say no. I'm probably going to piss everybody off, but 45X, IRA, all this crap, it doesn't need it. Get rid of it for wind, get rid of it for solar, get rid of it for oil and gas. Oil and gas hasn't needed it forever, right? And the last 4 years, a lot of projects that could never pencil except for tax harvesting went in the ground. A lot of projects that really had no financial way of even being viable without Uncle Sam's money. I think that's a terrible way to operate your business. In the last 4 years or so, if you operated on harvesting tax credits, you're in deep shit. And I'm saying when Trump got elected, or he got voted in November, I jokingly say he got the keys, he got the codes to the nukes. January 20th, he spanked that button hard, right? But everybody knew when Trump got in, things were going to change in renewables, and most companies did not change their spending habits, did not reduce their SG&As, did not right-size the ship. And since November till now, as you keep hearing, is projects have been moved to the right. Projects are moved to the right. Last time I checked, that means those projects are nearly dead, if not dead. Move to the right is code word in our industry for, I don't know if the damn thing's ever going to be installed, right? But now all of a sudden, in the last 3 months, I see this as the craziest solar, especially utility and distributed, the most crazy ride we've been on forever in a good way. But I think what I'm seeing is it's consolidating down quickly, right? All those companies that lived off IRAs and 45X and trying to, go be a player in the space, I'm not sure these big developers, these big utilities want to put their eggs in a lot of companies that have one foot in the grave and the other foot on a banana peel. And even then, I'm hearing customers saying, I don't even want to mess with publicly traded renewables companies right now because 1 minute they're worth $50, the next minute they're worth $3, then they're worth $20, right? I mean, you look at the battery energy storage, talk about a roller coaster. Renewables isn't a roller coaster, it's the Tower of Terror. Anybody that's gone to Disney World rode Tower of Terror, we say we're on a roller coaster. A roller coaster has forward motion. We are just on that Tower of Terror shaking like mad. And it's going to shake out a lot of players who, quite honestly, didn't need to be in the industry, right? But they jumped in to harvest tax credits. And if you win, you win. If you don't, prepare, right? And we're looking at a lot of companies who want to look at joining us from, say, mergers and acquisitions or whatever. And unfortunately, a lot of them have ran their businesses like the industry was never going to slow down or never get into turmoil, and it just put themselves where their line of credits are maxed out, their SG&A costs are out of control, their payables, their receivables are pushed out because a lot of companies don't like to pay in solar on time. Ding, 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 no news to any of us, right? And all of a sudden, they're like, hey, I'm looking to be, merged. And some of them, you got to say, you need a Chapter 11 attorney very quickly before things get even uglier. And again, I think some people know Ron Corio and I co-anchored Nails Partners, where we bought Nails Partners bought a bunch of utility scale transformer and distribution power generation, and they literally go through hundreds of books of potential players in the industry, and I think last year bought 3. That's how precarious the industry is at the moment. And is there cash available? Yes. Are they spending it like crazy on a lot of companies that are in deep shit? Not so much. But there are you see a little bit of M&A action going on right now, but I don't know if it's the right way to grow. I'm going to work on growing it organically, right? Because I'm privately held. My wife's never been the boss in my life, and this is my wife's, woman-owned company. It's her money, and I've never had my wife as my boss, and I've got the nicest boss I could ever hope for. And I just said that just to be nice. She's a pain in the ass.
Nice. So yeah, I mean, that kind of led into my next question a little bit. Do you see the industry having a cash problem right now, and how do you address that problem and access more capital kind of during this time of uncertainty?
Again, I'm going to say it in the private equity, the venture capital, and even some of the banks. There's a lot of money out there, but I think once they start doing due diligence on the health of a lot of these companies, I think a lot of them are just turned off. Right?
Yeah.
I mean, it used to be, get on the bankability report. I'm not even sure bankability reports even mean anything anymore, because one minute you're bankable, the next minute you're not. Let's face it, some of these, you go for the right lunch or dinner and you're back on. Not saying that, it's goofy, but I don't know if I really understand. I've been on bankability reports at Shoals forever. Sometimes I looked up and say, how the hell did that happen? Right? But is there money? Yes. Is it being spent like drunk sailors at port? No. And when it is spent, the deals are very, very slim. Everybody thinks they're going to go get, 10, 15, 20 times EBITDA. Good luck. Most people in renewables still think, oh, this is like a software. I'm going to get 20 or 30 times EBITDA. Shut up. No, you're not. You're going to get 3 to 6 times EBITDA if you're lucky. And some go, I want, 2 or 3x my top line. And most of them are underwater, right? Companies are live and die by EBITDA, especially when you want to mergers and acquisitions or be bought. You live and die by, do you have a bottom line or are you upside down? And a lot of them will show you upside down books and act like, you're just the finest, T-bone steak out there. And a lot of them are just running out of cash. Unfortunately, they're burning through cash. They didn't right-size their ship when they should have. And there's a lot of people I know in this industry, and I like them to death. And it's a tough position to be a manufacturer in the United States when your cash is tight. Because what you learn early on in life as a small business guy is cash is king. You could have the best books and the most profit margins. Once you let your cash dry up, no matter how great your books look and how much margin you're making, you're just dead. Once you burn through all your cash, good luck to you. And I think a lot of people lived off of line of credits, and line of credits are expensive. It's not quite, mob money, but might as well be, because some of them get 12 to 16 points on their mob money, these banks, and act like they're doing you a favor. Whatever's happened prior to Trump getting in manufacturing, business, it's a whole different world. We used to say in the industry, you wake up and every 90 days, solar and renewables is a whole new industry. Every day you open up your eyeballs, it's a whole damn new day. And you don't know what the hell is going to happen from day to day, right? who's the players, who's not players, who's in making this, who's making that, who wants to get out, who wants to be sold. And everybody thinks their companies are worth, 50 times more than they are. And I'd say a bunch of them are just a bunch of dog shit.
Yeah.
Well,
things are done.
I'll correct my language.
It's
But I'll
okay.
still
Yeah. Yeah. And one thing that's also moving really fast right now is the build out of AI and data centers. And that's a group that has, a whole lot of cash available. It's going to drive electricity usage up pretty significantly. Does Create Energy partner with data center integrators, and more broadly, what kind of opportunities do you see down that avenue?
That's the most psychotic, fun, insane industry I've ever seen in my life. We're messing with a bunch of solar fields and battery energy storage going in AI. And I would say for the most players I know kind of more intimately, they're 100% focused on data center and getting renewables on data centers. Because the data centers will pay a little premium, right, to get high quality. But in their favorite words, their LDs will probably destroy you like the Gong Show hitting you in the head, right? Because the data centers need installations done on this date, and they're your best friend until you miss a delivery. And I don't want to see how the data center people play when you miss a delivery or something. It's a psychotic, fast-running industry. It's changing all the time, and people don't want to hear it. But I say put the little small nukes on some of them things too. Because we need coal, we need solar, we need wind, right? We need small nukes. We need it all. We need as much power because let's face it, I'm 61-year-old fart, and I love AI already. I use the crap. I use Grok. I use Copilot. I use ChatGPT. Right? 3 months ago, I would have told you, shut up. I ain't using that crap. And here it is. Is it 100% right? I'd say it's 80% right now. Will it be 90% very quickly? All day long. The power usage and the learning and the algorithms that are just being pimped out to the max daily. I hate to say it. I have a lot of conversations with a lot of standards groups and all that, and you pay some high-powered executive to bloviate on what his knowledge of UL and IEC is, and you go to Grok or you go to ChatGPT and it lays out every damn code you want to know. It's scary, and how accurate, and you get right answers in 30 to 90 seconds versus, you're paying somebody some outrageous salary to tell you something that was true 10 years ago. We're all going to get replaced. We're all going to feed the beast. You know what we are? We're going to be the electron. We're going to serve electrons on platters to these data centers as renewable people. And hopefully, Mr. AI Skynet doesn't, take us out because we gave him an ugly looking electron for lunch or dinner.
Great. Great. Well, that's about all the time we have for the keynote here. Maybe about a minute left. Do you have any parting thoughts that you want to share with our audience today?
Make sure you have your cash flows controlled. If you need to right size your staff and your spending, do it sooner than later, right? Because once you get to that top line of credit, the banks freak out, private equity freaks out, venture capital. They're called vulture capitals for a reason because they're going to come with them big ass claws, and they're going to claw your ass and take your business from you. Venture capital is an ugly way to take money. Private equity is kinder and gentler, but the banks. If there's every one of them's a poison pill. And it's just, do you want fast poison? You want slow poison? And we got to get through this cycle. But I think, again, from what we're seeing at Create, the amount of crazy and the amount of projects flowing is insane. I've never in my last 10 years have seen so many monster projects that are going to get in the ground. And even, we go a couple, 2-3 years and this goes away and that Uncle Sam goes away and blah, blah, blah. I still think the industry's thriving because the price of solar or renewables is still coming down, right? Hardware is still coming down. Developers, they take too much out of the damn project. Let's face it, and I'm sure there's developers on here. If there's anybody who needs an ass whipping, it's developers and what they take pennies per watt, right? You can't squeeze every hardware guy for tenths of a penny while you're taking dimes home. Maybe you've smoked too many dime bags. That's a 70s joke, by the way. But, right, everybody's got to take their fair share so everybody thrives in the industry. And every utility and IPP, don't beat the hell out of the developer and the EPC to get your, down to the cheapest price you can, because you get what you pay for. And there's so much trash that's been built in the last 4 years. It's unbelievable. Most of the crap that's been built won't even make 2 years. And most of these EPCs, when you buy, they give you 2 years and 1 day of a warranty. Do you think it's their best interest to deliver you a kick-ass, reliable field that's going to last 25 years? That some bitch ain't even going to last for 2 years, right? You get what you pay for. And I'm going to keep saying to the IPPs and the utilities, quit beating the industry down so hard because you're buying garbage. And it starts at the top and winds up to the guy selling the nut and bolt and screws at the bottom of the pile. You get what you pay for. If you think you want a 25 now, and on top of it, most of these financial models are running 40 years. Good luck. Outside of my products, nothing's going to last. And I say it kind of tongue in cheek.
Awesome. Well, I think that's a really great place to close it off. Dean, thank you so much for your insights today. I really appreciate the discussion.
You're welcome.
Thanks very much. Take care.
Yeah, you got it.
Great. So next up, we're going to turn our attention to Ethan Eli with Trinasolar to discuss weather-resilient solar modules and their role in project bankability. Ethan Eli is a product manager at Trinasolar US, where he works to ensure product compatibility by collaborating with partners and defining module strategies. Before joining Trinasolar in November of 2024, the UCLA mechanical engineering graduate spent 7 years at SunPower, where he designed solar tracker and residential racking systems. He also provides technical support to customers and assists the sales and marketing teams. Welcome, Ethan. Thanks for joining us today.
Thank you. Thanks for that introduction.
Appreciate it.
Yeah, well, thank you for the introduction again, and I'll take it from here. I think this is a nice segue from the last conversation to talk about our new technology and in terms of getting what you pay for, something that is a little extra resilient and extra bankable, Trina's Shield module technology. So before I get into that, I'll just give a quick background on Trina. Many of you know who they are, but just to dive deep into some of the specifics, we were founded in 1997, so we have over 25 years of experience in R&D and technology development. We're the number one global shipper of 210 millimeter cell module sizes with over 200 gigawatts shipped, and we're a tier one module manufacturer per BNEF and S&P Global, which I think is very relevant today. On the R&D side, we've achieved 35 world records for PV cell efficiency and module output. And on the reliability side, we have demonstrated the PVL top performer status for 11 consecutive years and the RETC overall highest achiever for 5 consecutive years. With IP, we have been received over 3,400 patents, 500 of which are TopCon. I didn't note it, but we've also our patent application count is over 7,000 now. So in total, a lot of R&D knowledge behind our modules. So to give a quick recap of our module portfolio, we standardize around the 210 millimeter size cell, like I talked about, the G12R or G12. And for our smaller modules, we focus on that G12R size. We have residential modules. We have our medium format modules, which are focused for C&I rooftop or ground mount or smaller utility. And then we have our large format modules using that larger cell size, both with PERC and TOPCon. And we can get all the way up to 720 watts with that NEG 21C.20 large format module. But the module I want to focus on today is the one I've got indicated with the little red box, the NED 19RC.20, otherwise known as our Shield module. And this is a new iteration on our standard medium format module, which you may be familiar with, the NEG 19RC.20. So I'll give a broader introduction of that module. So first of all, on the power side, it has all the same characteristics that may be familiar with Trina's TOPCon technology. It has the same form factor as our standard medium format module. And that means it has high power and efficiency, up to 620 watts of power and 23% efficiency, 80% bifaciality, and performs very well with incident angle modifier and lower radiation performance. On the hail side, this is of course a hail resistant module, and it can withstand hail up to sizes of 55 millimeters or 75 millimeters when hitting the module at a 45-degree angle. On the fire side, it's passed UL 61730 to the Type 30 fire rating, which I'll explain a little bit further, but is an extra Class A rating, Class A plus A. On the wind resistance side, it's demonstrated static load capacity up to 8,000 pascals in downforce and 6,000 in uplift, which is really an incredibly high number. And on the tracker side, has demonstrated loads of 3,600 down and 3,000 up. It also has passed the non-uniform snow load test up to 6,600 pascals. And on the reliability side, it was named overall highest achiever with RITC's PV module index and a top performer by Kiewit PVAL. And all of this is achieved because it has 2.5 millimeter dual tempered glass. So that's 5 millimeters in total, equal on the top and the bottom. And that fully tempered glass introduces some really severe resilience, not only to hail, but also to all the other effects that we're discussing here. So diving into the wind capacity and the static load, as I mentioned, it can get up to 8,000 pascal in downforce and 6,000 in uplift. And we can show an example of how that's achieved on the left side here with 3 rails. And I would treat this as the upper bounds of what it can accomplish, but by no means the only way that it can accomplish it. It is a very robust module that can handle a number of different configurations and achieve a pretty high load in a lot of those configurations. So if you have projects that you're interested in scoping out, come to Trina with those requests and we can help you determine the best configuration and find the best application and be able to prove that it can achieve high load in any of those configurations. One of those configurations that I think is useful to talk about is the tracker mounted condition. And so this 3,600, 3,000 load rating obviously seems a lot lower than the high load side, but in the tracker world, this is a pretty high load and a load that is usually only accomplishable at the widest mounting hole spacing. So this module has 3 spacings, 3 different mounting hole spacings, and this load is achieved on the middle one, 790 millimeters. Normally you would need to mount at a wider length of 1,400 millimeters. And when you have to mount at wider spacings, that means longer purlins and more tracker costs. So with this module and this high load at a narrower spacing, that's going to directly translate to a reduction in cost on the system side. Oh, and I wanted to have a visual. I think, what does 8,000 pascals really mean? I looked it up. It can equate to 4 concert pianos standing on top of one another. So next time you think about a load like this, you can imagine this visual I got for you here. Moving on to other loading conditions, we've also performed the non-uniform snow load test. You can see kind of how it's represented here in a picture on the right. What this aims to do is to assess the way that the module is loaded in real life under snow load, where snow can accumulate towards the bottom of the module in a fixed tilt condition. So we ran that test, we passed it all the way up to 6,600 pascals. And I think this is a useful test to really show that the capacity of this module goes beyond your standard lab performance. This can handle some of the variability that exists in the real world. And this enables specifically that fixed tilt condition. On the fire side, this is one that I'm excited to delve into a little bit, because I think it's useful to step back and educate a little bit on what the fire test itself is. So the UL fire test, UL 61730, it grants a fire type ranging from a fire type number ranging from 1 to 49. And that is achieved both on module construction. So different fire, if it's a backsheet module or a dual glass module, and there's different thicknesses among those ratings, that will have a different number. And those categories are then subdivided by module performance. So within the construction categories, you can achieve better or worse fire types based on the module performance. These fire types are then used as an input in the UL 2703 rating that's on the system level that includes racking. And that UL 2703 rating grants A, B, or C class rating, which is then used as an input for permitting, and international building code is usually what dictates those requirements. Often people look for a class A per UL 2703. So going back to the module level fire type, there's two tests that have to be performed. There's a burning brand test and a spread of flame test. So the burning brand test, it involves the module with a flaming ember, a lattice shape that is flaming and applied directly on top of that module. And the test runs until it fully self-extinguishes. And if the fire breaks the module, if any embers hit the ground, that's treated as a fail. So the module has to stay intact during this test. And there are three different categories of tests. There's class C, B, and A. C is the smallest brand, A is the largest brand. Then there's the spread of flame test, which is essentially a flamethrower or a furnace being directed at the module. And the test is run for a certain length of time to identify whether the module will catch fire. And if it does catch fire, how far the leading edge of that fire spreads across the module. So to reach class A performance, you need to have not spread more than 6 feet in 10 minutes. So I put a little table here in the bottom left, which explains or compares some of the common fire types that you'll see out in the market. 1, 2, and 29 are really the most common. 1 and 2 are backsheet modules, and 29 is a dual glass module. So all these modules can achieve class A from the spread of flame side, but only type 30 is rated for class A on the burning brand side. Any of these modules could be capable of achieving class A as part of UL 2703, but the type 30 module fundamentally has a greater fire resistance than most other modules you'll see on the market. And then getting into the reliability side, as I mentioned, this is an overall highest achiever module. And what that means is that in all 6 of RATC's threshold tests, it achieved a degradation of less than 2%. And this is impressive kind of twofold, because not only is that much more stringent bar than the IEC criteria of less than 5% degradation, but the RATC test process is also itself more stringent than and more challenging than the IEC standard. For example, in thermal cycling, IEC only requires 200 hours of thermal cycling. RATC requires 600 hours. Damp heat is 1,000 hours on our IEC side. RATC requires 2,000. So it's both a more difficult test and better performance than what you would consider industry standard or a passing module to be. And now getting into the hail side of it. So as I mentioned, this is a hail resistant module, and it has varying capabilities with different angles that the hail is applied to the module. And I wanted to have a little stack up here to kind of visualize what that means. So for starters, we're already greater than the golf ball size at 55 millimeters. And that's applied at a 0 degree angle, applied directly to the module. It can handle, it can pass that test. If you increase that angle to 30 degrees, it can then handle 65 millimeter size hail. And then if you increase it again to 45 degrees, it can take a 75 millimeter hailstone, and that's about the size of a baseball. And I'll delve a little bit deeper into what that translates to on a project basis. First, just kind of a level setting, the reason that hail resilience is important, which I think many are familiar with. In an analysis that we were showing here, over 5 years of claims on the left side, even though hail was only 1.4% of the number of insurance claims, it accounted for 54% of asset loss and replacement costs. So the damage from hail is significantly outsized with respect to its occurrence. And that's also somewhat shown here on the right side, which we have a graph here that's showing the hotspots, the incidence rates across the world. If you can kind of zoom your view into the United States, in the Midwest, the center of America, is Hail Alley is certainly where hail damage occurs most frequently. And we're talking roughly $200 million of average annual loss in the United States. So to talk about how to characterize this, I wanted to delve a little deeper into the hail loss modeling methodology. So we have our TOCH equation, which is used to model the loss that occurs due to hail damage. And it has 4 different factors that go into it. So the first factor is the replacement cost of the module, the cost to replace the cost of buying a new module, and also the labor involved in replacing it. We have our downtime cost from not producing power during when that module is broken. And then we also have our probability of hail weather occurring. I won't get into the sub-equation here, but if you look at the table on the top right, this summarizes the outputs from that equation. So we have 3 different climate zones that we can bucket our different sites into: mild, occasional, and frequent hail zones. And then we can also see outputs relative to the hail size. So interestingly, the 30 to 65 range is roughly the most common, with up to a 30% chance in the frequent hail zone of the 35 to 50 millimeter hail size. The last factor is the probability of the module being damaged due to extreme weather. And that's where the resilience of the module, the actual design of the module, comes in. And we can show a comparison here in the bottom right between a standard 2 millimeter dual glass module and the shield module. And I think it's interesting to see that when you increase that hail size all the way up to 65 millimeters, we're talking about a pretty dramatic difference in likelihood of failure, from 80% with a dual glass module to 15% with the shield module. And that bears out in the results. So we put together a case study to show an example of this. And this case study we placed in North Texas near Lubbock, 100 megawatt project in a frequent hail zone. And we compared the standard module size with the shield module size on a 30-degree fixed tilt. And the difference is pretty dramatic, a savings of about 60%, and that equates to $1.72 million in savings. So in the real world examples, you can expect a genuine financial benefit from making your project more resilient with a hail module, and you will see that in the average annual loss numbers. So just to recap, the NED19 RC.20 module, also known as the Vertex N Shield module, offers truly excellent and extreme resistance to hail, fire, wind, and snow. That mechanical strength can meet a wide range of loading requirements, which can also translate to a reduction in system cost. The uneven snow load capacity of 6,600 pascals can show that it has durability in real world loading conditions, and its fire type 30, also known as class A+A, shows that it has well above average fire performance. It has received the RATC overall highest achiever performance with less than 2% degradation, and its super strong hail resilience can reach up to 75 millimeter hailstone at 45 degrees or 55 millimeters at 0 degrees. As we just saw in a frequent hail zone study, we demonstrated that you could reduce your losses by 60% or almost $2 million. So that's all that I have to share. Thank you everybody for listening, and I'll look forward to fielding any questions that you may have.
Excellent. Thank you, Ethan. So we have time for one or two questions. If you have any questions in the audience, feel free to submit them via the chat. So one question is about LCOE or levelized cost of electricity. How does the Vertex enShields extended warranty, its TOPCon cell technology, and the low degradation associated with that, how does that pair with hail resilience and support LCOE over the and revenue stability over a full 30-year expected life of the product?
Yeah, absolutely. And yeah, thank you for bringing up our warranty and degradation. I didn't mention that, but it's a 0.4% annual degradation and a 30-year power warranty, which I think speaks to the confidence we have in this module to perform. And I think that I view this module as kind of a all of the above module, where you can, maybe you buy it because you want a hail resistant module, but you're also getting an RATC overall top performer. You're getting a fire resistant module. So where you may be investing in one area, you're getting resilience in a number of different categories, and that will demonstrate itself in the overall cost of the LCOE being reduced over a project's lifetime, because even things that maybe you're not modeling for are going to be avoided. And so I think that in terms of direct ways that we have actually modeled where you can reduce LCOE, obviously the hail resistance side, like we just talked about, there's an average annual loss reduction there. That's going to, if you're self-insuring, you're going to be able to see that. If you're receiving an insurance product, your insurance premiums are going to go down. And then on the products, the system level side, if you are using a tracker system, for example, or a racking product, which normally you would need to reinforce the module with the racking, the burden is less on the racking side. You're going to reduce racking cost, and your overall LCOE will go down there. So there's really a lot of different ways, some which we've modeled, and even more which we haven't.
Great. And one more question. With a hail resistant module comes, a hardened glass surface. Is there any kind of significant efficiency trade-off that you see with that? And is that, from an LCOE perspective, is that sort of washed out with the benefits of lowered risk?
Yeah, thankfully, no. There's no efficiency degradation that we have observed. This is side by side with our kind of standard non-hail resistant module, and they have exact same performance, exact same electrical architecture, and a power and efficiency that is still kind of leading edge. So I think that's the great thing, that kind of, as I was mentioning before, with it being an all of the above module, you don't really have to compromise. You can still get the same performance that you expect out of the N-type TOPCon technology. This is just an added bonus that you could also have hail, wind, fire, snow resiliency as well.
Excellent. Awesome. Well, really appreciate your time, Ethan, and your presentation on the modules. Definitely meeting the moment as we see hail ramp up and accelerate across the U.S. So really appreciate your insights today.
Thank you. It's a pleasure to be here.
Thank you. So we'll now take a 10-minute break. When we return on the other side, we'll have our panel discussion. We're going to talk about project finance, policy deadlines, bankability, resilience, and more. So be sure to tune back in, and we'll be back in about 10 minutes. We're running about 5 behind, so we'll be back at 1:10 p.m. Eastern Time. Thanks very much. Welcome back, everyone, to our PV Magazine USA Week 2025, Day 1, Unlocking Capital. Before we dive deep into our panel discussion, we're just going to open up a poll question to the audience here. So this will pop up on your screen here. Which of the following has presented the greatest challenge for your business? Is it expiring investment tax credits, the foreign entity of concern or FEOC restrictions, cuts to funding from DOE or EPA, as well as the Solar for All program, or tariffs, including reciprocal tariffs, AD/CVD, and more? So we'll take a moment for those responses to roll in. A lot of major changes to adjust to this year. These four are not exhaustive, but have definitely been some big ones. So we'll just wait another moment for a few more responses. Great, and looks like the leading response right now is tariffs, reciprocal tariffs. We've had tariffs on aluminum, steel, solar components. AD/CVD investigations continue to go along and cause uncertainty and push up prices for procuring solar internationally. FEOC restrictions kind of tied to that procurement. That's the second most common response I'm seeing here. And then the expiring investment tax credits, the 30% investment tax credit, closing out about 5 years ahead of schedule here, also causing some challenges. So thanks very much for your responses there. So now we'll go ahead and move on to our main panel session here. Our four panelists will discuss project finance, policy deadlines, bankability, resilience, and more. If you have any questions for our panelists, feel free to submit them in the Q&A session, and we'll try to get to as many responses as we can. So we're now pleased to introduce today's panel. So first off, joining us is Trenton Alon. Trenton Alon is the founder and CEO of Sustainable Capital Advisors, a climate financial advisory firm that he founded in 2012. Known for his leadership in climate finance and clean energy policy, the Harvard graduate previously pioneered sustainable finance mechanisms like green bonds and green banks during his decade-plus career at Citi. At SCA, he's guided innovative financial strategies, including supporting the Community Builders of Color Coalition, and has served on the U.S. Secretary of Energy Advisory Board. His visionary leadership fosters innovation, equity, resilience, in the ongoing transition to a sustainable future. Thanks for joining us today, Trenton.
Thank you for having me.
We're also joined by Charlie Lord, Managing Principal of Renew Energy Partners, a company that finances and develops clean energy projects that help building owners reduce their emissions. A Yale graduate with a law degree from the University of Virginia, Lord has combined social, environmental, and financial innovation throughout his career. Before Renew, he co-founded the environmental justice organization Alternatives for Community and Environment, and worked in global carbon finance and sustainable infrastructure investments. Thanks for joining us, Charlie.
Great to be here. Thanks, Ryan.
Thanks. And we're also joined by Alon Mashkovich. He is the CEO and co-founder of enSights. Mashkovich brings over 15 years of experience in energy consulting, renewables, and business operations. He's passionate about helping companies digitize their energy strategies to drive performance, sustainability, and long-term impact. Thank you, Alon, for joining us.
Pleasure being here.
And finally, our final panelist is John Sedgwick, founder of VDE Americas. Sedgwick is a serial entrepreneur with over 2 decades of renewable energy experience. At VDE Americas, he directs the company's natural catastrophe risk advisory products for solar assets. Before VDE, Sedgwick co-founded Solon in 2002, where he held a key role in commercializing silicon ingot technology and securing patents before the company was sold to SunEdison. He remains a member of VDE America's board of directors. Thanks, John, for joining us.
Yeah. Thank you very much, Ryan. I'm actually filling in for my colleague John Primatelli, who's really the true expert in these areas. Interesting, John is across the world over in Australia, introducing a new capability we have for assessing hail risk globally in areas that don't have the same kind of database infrastructure as we have in the U.S. So I'll try and fill in for him. He's the real expert in solar finance, and he runs our CAT area for the company.
Yeah, we're sorry John couldn't join us today, but really, John couldn't join us today, but appreciate you stepping in, John. So with the clock ticking on tax incentives, developers are focused on bankability, resilience, operational efficiency. Let's start with the immediate potential challenge, which is a potential cliff of project deployment coming up after the expiration of the tax credits. So this is a question broadly open to the panel, whoever wants to jump in. The solar industry is navigating an accelerated expiration of federal tax incentives. From a finance, development, and risk management perspective, what's the most critical action that a developer should take today to triage their portfolio and ensure that their priority projects reach the place in service deadline? Maybe Trenton could start with that.
Sure. Thanks, Ryan. As you mentioned, right now is a critical time for many developers as they're looking to really ensure that their projects do reach sort of the place in service deadlines. And we've seen from conversations that we've had with many of them that what they're trying to do is make sure that their projects are as far up on the interconnection queues as possible, ensuring that they are dotting all the I's, crossing all the T's to ensure that their projects don't slip. And it might sound a little boring, it's not finance, but it really is sort of project management now to ensure that they can meet all these particular deadlines and gates and really don't put the projects at risk of potentially not meeting the deadlines. And so that's been critical, particularly to some of the lenders that we've worked with, given the fact of how the economics of the projects changes quite dramatically if these projects were not able to achieve the investment tax credits. And so lenders are putting more pressure on developers to ensure that they are meeting all those particular milestones. And having that proof, we've seen lenders being asking for more proof of where they're at in the process as they think about sort of what the potential risk of from their side of projects failing to meet sort of the place in service deadlines on some of these particular projects, both sort of larger projects, but even some of the more distributed projects that we see across communities across the country.
Yeah, and I would say picking up on that and echoing what Trent just said, in order to meet the safe harbor provisions, in order to meet the critical deadlines, you need to safe harbor projects by July of 26, and then you need to hit the 4-year milestone for completing projects. The devil's in the details on that. And as Trenton said, we think that making sure that you're in the right place in interconnect is the linchpin. And on top of that, this involves for projects under 1.5 megawatts, you can still use the 5% safe harbor, which is what everyone's used to. But if you're above that, and we focus on C&I, so we do have some fair number of projects that are under that threshold. But if you're above that threshold, the new provision is continuous construction, which is a new phrase that people are still getting used to. So understanding what continuous construction means, and then really overlaying the concept of continuous construction onto your development timeline to make sure that you're not just meeting the standard EPC milestones that we used to manage to, but actually managing to avoid long stretches of inactivity at a site. That's a whole new sort of overlay to a construction timeline to make sure you continue to capture the tax credit. I would say we're going to come back to this, or we should, I hope. The FIAC rules, and full disclosure, I voted for FIAC on the poll. The FIAC rules are the most dangerous in some ways because the guidance has not dropped yet, and so there's a huge amount of uncertainty. To the extent you're transferring a tax credit, which is something that we do, and the transfer provisions from 22 survive and are critical to small and medium-sized projects monetizing the tax credit, but the FIAC rules, you're subject to recapture for the full 10 years for violation of the FIAC rules. So there's a huge amount of uncertainty there, and locking down as much certainty as possible on compliance with those is a critical move now, it seems to us.
Thanks. Yeah, two different zones to zoom in on there. First, the continuous construction rules. Is there any outstanding guidance that the industry is waiting for? Or are we still seeing how continuous construction is being interpreted? And are there maybe any best practices that you could recommend for meeting that requirement?
Lawyers in the field are starting to put out guidance. I was actually on a panel yesterday for Mintz Levin's Energy Transition Summit here in Boston. And the consensus was the best thing the industry could do would be to have all the lawyers actually, and this is actually not a joke. It sounds like a lawyer joke in the offing, but what would be important be to coalesce around a definition of continuous construction, so that when that gets interpreted, eventually that's going to go for interpretation, right? At the agencies, it's never been interpreted. The entire concept of the safe harbors, other than the 5%, has never been interpreted. So the best thing we can do would be to coalesce around a definition. There are definitions out there that people can access, and a lot of it is about, not to oversimplify it, avoiding significant gaps, and then understanding what constitutes a qualifying activity. As long as, in our view, design, for example, and engineering counts, but you want to have a regular presence at the site. There are emerging milestones. It would be smart for the industry to coalesce around a common definition.
Excellent, thank you. Yeah, and then another question for Trenton. With the tax equity market under strain, what new forms of institutional capital are showing the most interest in U.S. solar today? And what kind of structural assurances are they demanding to enter the market?
Well, we work with a wide variety of clients, and we have some municipalities or developers who are working with municipalities to sort of investigate sort of whether those projects can be municipally owned in order to take advantage of the direct pay provisions of the investment tax credits during this period of time. And that would allow for the municipalities or municipal entity or nonprofit entity to basically take ownership of these particular projects to deal with what, any challenges in the tax equity markets. And so we've seen a lot of interest from cities and nonprofits who are thinking about sort of how do they meet this particular this cliff, how do they position projects and initiatives that they had already considered, and how can they accelerate them to meet that. In addition, we've started to see other entities, other types of structures step in to think about sort of how the access to sort of long dated fixed income markets can be utilized to meet the needs of capital for these particular projects. But once again, so that might be institutional buyers in the green bond space or in others. But once again, that requires scale. And so that gets you into sort of this question of, are you in a distributed market? Or are you talking about something that's in the larger CNI or utility scale? And that sort of determines sort of how you get sort of the certain types of investors into these underlying investments. But we're seeing a lot of creativity in the marketplace as developers and offtake parties are trying to find ways to not only think about sort of how to execute the deals that are still available now, utilizing the ITCs as best as possible, but also start to prepare for a day when the ITCs may not be accessible because they may not have been able to meet the safe harbor. And so what do those opportunities start to look like? Because there's still a lot of interest in pursuing these particular projects, given sort of where we are in the overall energy markets in the United States.
Excellent. Thank you. And John, following up on that, the cost and availability of property insurance is a risk factor. What specific quantifiable resilience measures like certified wind and hail resistant module selection, specific tracker stow algorithms, or site-specific mounting design, what are insurers now demanding to grant a favorable premium to deductible items?
Yeah, we've been spending a lot of time. I've personally been spending a lot of time working with the underwriter community, spending some time in London where they're primarily headquartered, and trying to move that industry, which is not easily moved, into recognizing that there are significant pro forma advantages when you apply appropriate technologies and operate it appropriately, specifically when you're trying to build resiliency against hail. So we've been demonstrating to them with financial modeling, indicating that if you utilize modules like was discussed in the previous presentation at Trina or hail resilient modules from First Solar, and then you operate them on a tracker system that can get to a very high angle and get there in advance of a storm with some intelligence and automation. It always gets down to the simple kind of things. A lot of times you have resilient capability, but you just don't get there. And that's been a problem that's been generating a lot of losses, is that you could get to a high angle on your tracker, but the button just simply wasn't pushed because somebody couldn't find a password or something ridiculous like that. But now that Next Tracker, Array, Game Change, various others are integrating automated systems that react to weather service signals that automatically go into an optimal mode, coupling the optimal tracker angle with the very highly resilient modules, we demonstrate that you get very significant reduction in the potential financial loss over the lifetime of the asset, and the risk is reduced substantially. So the key is to get the insurance companies to recognize that. We've got some that are actually providing some reductions in the terms and conditions, and maybe reductions in some of the terms associated with the insurance policies that are all accretive to the financial performance of the asset. So I think it's starting to happen. I don't think we have enough actual demonstration that it's happening. It's an industry that's hard to move, but we're working hard on it.
Great, thank you. Now for Alon, when developers present a project for finance, what are some key performance indicators or KPIs that the most sophisticated lenders and equity investors are now demanding to see tracked digitally to prove a project's long-term durability and resilience? You with us, Alon? We'll try to get Alon back online in a moment. So we'll pivot for now. Oh, there you are. Sorry, could you start over? Do you need me to repeat the question?
Hope you hear me now.
Could you speak again? We had a little bit of a delay.
I hope you hear me by now.
Yep, I can hear you. Thank you.
You hear me?
Yes.
I gotcha.
I apologize. Somehow the connectivity today is not so good with me. If you are hearing me, so I think the most important thing is generation. The metrics, data to show that you know how to track and translate the kilowatts to money.
Excellent. And how does enSights and your AI back platform, how does that better track generation figures and really make sure you're capturing the most value?
So from IPPs that we are working with, we are able to identify how their portfolios are working and performing over the years. So they are able to highlight why they are producing much better. They are enabling tracking availability versus their actual versus expected, to normalize all the KPIs, and eventually to attribute the yield loss, the explained and unexplained, and they highlight how using our actionable insights, they are able to generate long-term.
Thanks. It seems like we're having some connection problems there. So we'll pivot for a moment while we work out the internet connection. So I'm gonna open this one to multiple members of the panel, talking about the true return on investment of project resilience. So implementing best practices like hail optimized stow algorithms, which John can comment on, or advanced digital monitoring, which Alon can comment on. Some of these mechanisms can add to a project's upfront capital expenditure. So could you talk a little bit about the framework for quantifying the long-term return on investment of this resilient spending in terms of either reduced insurance premiums, lowered operation and maintenance costs, or improved project valuation for finance? Could you start with that, John?
Yeah, I can start on that. Yeah, as we live in interesting times, like we always have in the solar industry for a long time. But now more than ever, I think doing cash flow modeling, as Dean talked about, cash is critical. But doing the cash flow modeling under a lot of different scenarios is really important, and then testing that against the pro forma performance. So taking it from a Hale perspective, and I'll let my other colleagues talk about some of the other financial perspectives about it. But from a Hale perspective, it's more critical than ever to have a very comprehensive understanding of your exact hail risk at your precise location.
Thank you.
Yeah, I was getting to the point where it's more critical now than it was in the past to make sure you have a very resilient pro forma going forward. And part of that, from a hail perspective and hail risk area, is having very precise understanding of what your hail risk is at your specific location. Because you're making critical CapEx decisions on the front end of whether to spend more money to get more resilient systems installed. The higher tracker angle things cost more money. The more resilient the modules are, they cost more money. And so you have to weigh the upfront cost of putting those in versus what your long-term hail risk is going to look like. So running these models, we have one that we call our pro forma risk model, where we can take a look at what the actual pro forma risk is to your project over the specific lifetime of the financial interest in the asset. And then you can test it using various types of technologies, various types of systems, and see what the impact is on the actual pro forma. And then determine which one will generate the appropriate cash over a long-term period to make it a viable project, even without ITC considerations.
Excellent, thank you. So let's open a question back up to Charlie and Trenton here. Looking beyond the immediate prioritization and tax credit crunch, what's the primary lever sort of post 2027 for competitive project returns in that post ITC landscape? Will it be pure cash equity, increased utilization of production tax credits, or what kind of mechanisms do you see pushing projects forward once that tax credit availability is gone? Maybe Trenton can start.
Okay, happy to start. I think it's after 2027, I think the ones you mentioned, sort of the cash equity and production tax credits and debt and storage, will be still there. But I think part of the largest driver still is going to be our overall energy demand, right? And so what we see is significant increases in energy prices across the country. And so if you look back over the beginning part of this decade, you're seeing, annual rate increases in some parts of the state, parts of the country of double digits. And that's before all this build out that you see from AI and data centers. We expect that to have still a significant increase to sort of what is the core electricity prices for all consumers. And so as a result, what you're going to see is even though the ITCs will sunset, unfortunately, the price of electricity will continue to rise in many parts of the country, and that will not be uneven as well. So you'll see sort of large spikes, and that will drive some of the economics of these particular projects. And so I would expect, particularly in some of those markets where you see the highest increases in electricity, where you see sort of battery storage and other storage types of technologies coming to the forefront to not only being able to finance those particular types of technologies, but to provide even greater kickers to the underlying economics from being able to deploy those type of battery solutions in a way to reduce overall bills, whether it's at the commercial level, industrial level, or even the household level. And so I think that's what you're going to see. So, without sort of the financial, it's just the environment we're going to find ourselves. The price of electricity, as it continues to increases, will provide the economic opportunities to still deploy and to implement these types of technologies, particularly in the solar space.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. That's where I was going to start too. I think what Trenton said is key, which is that we tell our C&I portfolio customers, and we work with a lot of supply chains and manufacturing, a lot of manufacturers, hospitals, universities. Then this is, putting in distributed generation in our markets behind the meter, as well as community solar and some of the other opportunities, allows these portfolios to control their energy future. So we're looking to the market dynamics to say, it's in addition to what Trenton mentioned, which we all know, which is the skyrocketing costs. The unpredictability is very hard for CFOs to build, a solid picture of where their business is going to be. And so you take both of those out of the equation by putting essentially controlling your energy future by, locking in renewables under long-term contracts. I think the other answer, and when you get into specifics of financing these projects, obviously some of the impact of losing the tax credits can be addressed by low-cost debt and other ways of funding projects. There are local and regional examples of methodologies that could help. We are the approved energy as a service provider for the Go Green financing program in California, which is a program in the California Treasurer's Office. That's essentially a credit enhancement product that provides a backstop to customer payments and allows for a lower cost debt. So we can bring our lenders to the table and underwrite projects at a better rate because of the state program and the loan loss reserve. That's the kind of program that could be replicated across the country in other jurisdictions to bring down the cost of capital. Yeah, I don't think you're necessarily ever going to close the 30% tax credit, but every little bit helps. I think market dynamics helps. Credit enhancement helps. The other thing that we're seeing is a premium on structuring PPAs in third-party funding model like ours, with as much in the way of locked payments as possible, we can get very low-cost capital if a large proportion of the payment structure is fixed under a capacity payment. A lot of owners may not love that. Part of the attraction of the PPA is paying for what you get, but it may be worth it to start looking at models that we've been working on, where you build a project with more predictable cash flows, and for good credits, the finance markets can provide really good rates, and again, bring down the overall cost of capital on a project and close the gap to some extent.
Yeah, I can just let me add to Trenton. The key is the good news is we got this overall demand push that's being driven by the AI servers and those kind of things. So there's an additional element beyond just the IRR and cash performance aspect of it. It's how fast you can get these energy producing assets in the ground. And currently, solar has got a cost advantage on its actual price, but it's also got an advantage. It's the fastest way of getting electricity to provide the significant demand that's popping up. There's a lot of talk about nuclear and other things and small nuclear might have a much easier time getting in the ground, but who knows? It's all brand new. Certainly traditional nuclear, you're looking at extremely long durations of getting electricity to the actual facilities, where solar's got a distinct advantage of being the most efficient way of servicing that demand.
Thank you. Let's pivot back now to talking about local alignment with projects. Trenton, your framework helps municipalities address climate-related financial risks. How can solar developers leverage this local planning and policy alignment to not only secure projects, but also reduce development risk, like permitting delays, and ultimately improve the bankability of the project?
Thanks, Ryan. I think you're referring to some of the work that we've done in some cities across the country, where we've working with them to sort of develop sort of a holistic view of their underlying climate risk within their communities, and develop a framework to identify what are the right solutions that allows for them to mitigate some of the risks that they see, whether it might be flooding, or whether it is tied to excessive heat, or is tied to other parameters, to help them get this full view. And what comes out of particularly some of these particular areas is those that risk and analysis usually is tied also to how they are also going to meet their underlying climate goals, of which energy efficiency and reduction of energy costs at the household level all the way up to the commercial, industrial, and municipal is incredibly important. But also in almost every place across the country, they're looking to see about how they can deploy solar. And so what that means is really sort of, you talked about this alignment between sort of the municipalities who are interested in moving projects forward that reduce overall climate risk, but also that also has the ability for them to meet some of their underlying climate goals. And so being able to think about how solar can be deployed in particular areas of cities becomes important. So what that allows is, many times there is priority areas that they are looking to see solar to be developed and installed. There might be availability of some of the cities we're working with are looking to partner with CDFIs and other lenders to make capital available in areas where they think that there is an opportunity to hit all these particular areas. And so the advice would be for developers is, in the cities that you're working in, or cities or counties that you might be working in, is to identify if there's some of these opportunities available, if there's some of these networks or collaboratives available, and then start to think about sort of where are those priority locations at, where there might be right for partnerships. Sometimes these comes with some expedited permitting or some other abilities to sort of expedite interconnections. And so that's where we see sort of the project development with the developers, and also meeting municipal and climate risk goals at the city and local level sort of come to get dovetail together in a way that really can accelerate further deployment of these particular projects.
Thanks. And building off that, Charlie, Trenton mentioned energy efficiency, and we've talked a little bit about energy storage. What does it look like for a C&I customer? Like, do all of these supportive technologies make a better case for adopting more solar, and how does that look for a customer?
Yeah, it's a great question. Thanks, Ryan. I mean, we, in our experience, C&I portfolios are looking for energy optimization and decarbonization to be addressed holistically. Solar is always the number one thing our customers want. It's the most visible thing. It's the most well-known intervention for decarbonization and distributed energy. And it is part of a larger energy optimization program. To state the very obvious and the most obvious, we always counsel energy efficiency first so that you right size your energy, your DG project. That's particularly important now with the challenges of the tax credit and the notion that the solar tax credit will be sunsetting early. You don't want, you want to minimize your reliance on the tax credit by building the right size solar project, and you definitely don't want to overinvest in the capital on the capital cost of the solar. So right size by getting the energy efficiency in first. The other thing that is important is when you include solar as a central but not conclusive component of an overall energy optimization program, the benefits of other interventions can offset some of the changes in the long-term ROIs for the solar. So efficiency savings can offset what might be, a cost-neutral impact on solar where it would have been cost savings with the tax credit. So CFOs and finance teams that look at the energy optimization program, not just as a whole at a single site, but across a number of sites, to see what the long-term OPEX savings is across a number of sites, then you begin to dampen the negative impacts to the project economics of the sunsetting of the tax credit. So it's critical to include these other methods, capture the savings from those, and use those in the overall evaluation of the financial impact of the solar program. And certainly solar will be a central piece of C&I energy optimization going forward. It doesn't go away. We think it becomes more bankable and more sellable, and more saleable as a part of a larger program.
Excellent, thank you. And now moving back over to utility scale projects. For John, beyond standard IEC certification, what are some next generation testing protocols that go beyond certification that developers should start to prioritize so they can enhance a project's long-term durability and bankability?
Yeah, there's a lot of really exciting things happening in that area. And obviously IEC is a very slow-moving kind of a process. It's like the United Nations trying to get any kind of modification to IEC. Specifically, when you're talking about the 61215 hail testing, it's just not an adequate test to determine the resiliency of your hail and how it performs financially in the long term, meeting the performer objectives. So there needs to be new testing processes developed, and we've developed one. We call it the HRC. It's a hail resiliency curve testing format, which is dramatically better for determining the actual resiliency of a module. And that's going to become even more critical now that we have to deal with these FEOC situations where there may be a lot of new domestic manufacturing coming up. There's going to be products that are coming online, and insurance companies and developers are going to need to have a very viable way of having a reliable test that indicates what the true resiliency of the module is. So the HRC test that we've developed is a test test of failure versus a test of pass. The IEC 61215 test was 11 shots of 25 millimeter size freezer ice balls on modules, and every one of them passed. That tells you nothing about the overall resiliency performance of the module. So the HRC involves many more modules being tested, many more shots, and it's a test of failure. It's a test that's been utilized by the glass industry forever to characterize the true resiliency of the glass that's being used for architectural, automobile, and those type of things. And now we're implementing it in solar. And what it provides is a resiliency curve that can be fed into our financial modeling software and give you a true indication of how that module is going to perform over time. So what that does is that provides even more confidence to insurance companies and financial entities that the actual financial performance that we're indicating from our modeling is going to be given all of the probabilistic elements of it, a reliable measure for applying appropriate insurance terms or appropriate financial terms.
Thank you. Now let's move back to FIAC. Charlie, you mentioned that the foreign entity of concern restrictions have been the leading challenge among the four listed there. Could you talk a little bit about what that experience of this new regulation has looked like for you?
Yeah, I think, as everyone knows, the uncertainty of the summer was a roadblock to projects moving forward for several months there. Projects are again moving forward, and the one area with the highest degree of uncertainty are the FIAC rules. At one point in the drafting, they were quite draconian, and it could have really been a poison pill to not just solar, but the range of technologies for which tax credits will continue longer, like standalone battery projects and even geothermal. The final form of the bill was better. It seemed to move back up to the chain so that you're due diligencing, the product, not the components, but there's still some uncertainty there. And there is additional guidance due, which hasn't been provided. So I think any business leader of any background, of any political persuasion, would say all we want is certainty. So if you're going to issue these new rules, then just change the context, then just give us the rules so we can manage accordingly. I think the additional layer of, so the first thing is to get certainty on where we have to do the FIAC testing, and then the scope of that risk, so that we can begin to build in the due diligence required. The implications of the FIAC rule are crucial across the industry. For us, because we monetize smaller to medium-sized tax credits in the C&I sector, for which the transaction costs of a traditional partnership flip are prohibitive, we've been able to utilize tax credits for smaller projects under the transfer provisions, and those of us in our business than were traditionally monetized, which is a huge benefit to expanding the deployment of renewables across the C&I sector. At the center of the transfer provisions, which did also survive, is the importance of recapture insurance. This insurance product is relatively easy to get. It covers a handful of unlikely episodes under which a tax credit ownership would change, which would trigger recapture. The challenge with FIAC is that quite explicitly you are exposed to recapture risk for 10 years for violating those rules. So again, clarity on how to stay on the right side of FIAC is going to be critical to be able to access insurance, recapture insurance, and continue to utilize the transfer provisions. So the guidance could go either way, but with clear guidance on where we measure and how to stay on the right side of fiat, I think we can navigate it. It's an area of the probably for us the highest uncertainty at this point, which is why I called it out.
Thank you. And another one of the 4 poll response questions was about cuts to funding, federal funding. One of the major cuts that's sort of still ongoing is the $7 billion Solar for All program. It's actively being litigated right now. There's states suing EPA for the funds being clawed back. Trenton, could you talk a little bit about what the experience has been like with this, what the program was intended to serve, and sort of the challenges that this has been causing, and maybe an outlook for how things may go?
Sure. The program that Ryan has alluded to was Solar for All program that was part of the Greenhouse Gas Reduction Fund, which was the $27 billion program that was part of the Inflation Reduction Act. And the goal of Solar for All literally was solar for all. So every state across the country was able to apply to provide funding at the state level, but also to a number of nonprofits who work across state lines, as well as in tribal communities, to really provide support and access to solar deployments, particularly at the household level, to underserved communities across the country. And so this was going to almost every state except for Florida and Mississippi. And really, from every state that we've spoken to, there was planning to how they would utilize this funding to support new entrants effectively into the solar market, identifying communities that there was an interest and a need in the economics and how they could support it, how they could support local developers to come in and support and implement projects, residential solar or community solar projects in a vast amount of communities across the country. And so when these particular funds were frozen, that was a significant hit to many of these particular communities who have spent some time developing partnerships, developing strategies for how they're going to really have solar be embedded in more communities across our country. And so now with the litigation, as you mentioned, ongoing, many of those states are frozen. Some of them, particularly in areas throughout the Midwest, may not have the resources available from their states, like California has made available, like through the Go Green program that Charlie mentioned previously. They don't have that type of financial infrastructure to move forward with some of these particular initiatives. And so they're sort of they're at a standstill. And so markets and consumers who have been interested are sort of waiting. The community development financial institutions and local banks who are started to develop new financial products to meet the moment in those particular areas are sort of on hold. And so what you see is 2 or 3 years worth of activity sort of put on hold as this litigation gets mounted through. What we've seen, though, is still a tremendous amount of interest. And so we've seen, while some of this has been stymied, we've seen some of these states start to move forward. So looking for other funding that they may have had, whether it was energy conservation block grants or other types of funding that they may have or state funding to sort of move forward, even just sort of the planning and structuring to sort of see how they can engage in those markets, recognizing that they have already started to build the partnerships necessary. They have customers who are interested. They have financial parties ready to go. And so how can they still move forward, recognizing that there is also this clock ticking on being able to access the tax credits that were so important to many of these particular projects. And so, for the legislation, everyone's still waiting. But I think on the ground, there's still opportunities there and partners that are interested in finding ways to move forward. And so while some of the economics may not work in some cases, I think there still is some parts of the country where what they were building through Solar for All, private other parties, private lenders, financial partners can really sort of step in to sort of meet the moment and support these projects get executed in communities that unfortunately, sort of have lagged behind in sort of their overall solar deployment.
Thank you. We'll try to field some questions from the audience here. If you have any questions for our panel, feel free to shoot them over in the chat or Q&A section here. We had one for John here. Are you seeing issues with insurance non-renewal, especially with weather risks? And or are you seeing instances where a project won't be able to get insurance due to extreme weather risk?
The insurance markets are changing always, and that really is dependent upon the capacity of the insurance marketplace. I found that it's somewhat disconnected from really good technical analysis of what's installed or what's not installed. It's what is the general capacity of insurance and how much do they want to deploy in order to generate their business. We went through a period where capacity was very low, and that meant renewals were tough to get, and you got more scrutiny on what was installed, and the better you could defend the resiliency of your system, the more likely you were to get insurance at some limits and appropriate rates. We've seen an easing in that capacity recently, so insurance capacity has eased up, so there is more insurance available, and so therefore they're not looking as hard at some of the conditions that they were before, and utilizing that as a way to ferret out what they want to insure and what they don't want to insure. But overall, insurance companies are getting much more sophisticated on being able to analyze the quality of the system that you're installing, which means you need to have modules that are tested using that HRC test that I mentioned before. You need to show that you're utilizing an effective hail defense mechanism with your tracker system, your ability to get to the appropriate tracker angle in advance of a storm is very critical. And then they're also looking at things like having a way of verifying the performance of that, which is traditional in the insurance markets. For example, you need to test your sprinkler system on your buildings if you're going to get fire insurance reductions in rates. So these things are being implemented and are being deployed, and I think we're seeing some movement in the marketplace where insurance terms and conditions are going to get better. And then to add to that, given that the resiliency of the systems are getting very high, other insurance techniques, like parametric insurance, could become much more popular going forward, where you only are insuring to use the term black swan kind of events that might hit, where you're not insuring the entire property over all potential hail risks, but only those that meet the criteria of the parametric insurance of a very large kinetic energy event. And I'm thinking that might be a very good way of making insurance much more efficient, cost effective.
Excellent, thanks. So we have time for one or two more questions here. I'll try to field another one from the audience. Charlie, I think you touched on this a little bit, but are you seeing tax credit insurers covering fiat risks?
TBD, to be perfectly honest. I could make something up. It's too early. I mean, I know the market well because we've been, up to our eyeballs in it for several years here. My guess is that it's not going to be a small problem, but that we will manage to address it. It will all come down to we will be asked to provide a due diligence program for FIAC. That'll obviously be part of the underwriting. And as with, for example, meeting the efficiency requirements on a cogen project, we'll probably be asked to provide an annual certification around compliance with FIAC and the steps we're taking to make sure we're compliant. I'm just guessing here. I assume once we have the guidance that we will, the insurers will develop a program for understanding that risk and how to demand that developers manage it. But it's right now it's too early to tell.
Excellent, thank you. And let's take one final question here for Trenton. We've talked a lot about the challenges today. We opened with a poll of 4 pretty major challenges, but there's still a lot of strong fundamental drivers that are going to push solar ahead for years to come. Can you talk a little bit about those fundamental drivers and why the growth ramp still looks strong for solar?
Sure. I think we hit on a number of them already. All right. So I think the price of electricity, unfortunately, will continue to rise, and so that'll allow for solar to be cost competitive in quite a number of places across the country. Our need for energy quickly in places. I think John mentioned this, and so solar being able to be deployed within years compared to decades, like you have some of the large solutions, whether it be large scale, utility scale coal plants, nuclear projects, or combined cycle natural gas plants. Those just take a while to be sited, developed, financed, and be online for what our energy demands are. And then I think, as we think about sort of, to meet the needs of what we need on the energy side, sort of having solar as part of our sort of dynamic energy system is going to be needed for us to be able to think about sort of how we manage it, how do we manage demand, how we manage different loads, and solar as a flexible source of generation is part of that. So I think about sort of as we think about how we optimize our overall energy system, solar is going to be key to that. And so those 3 things plus a few others will still make it sort of very important for how we think about sort of meeting our overall energy needs, and that will create the demand that's necessary to continue to grow this particular market in the United States.
Excellent. Thank you. Well, I think that's a good place to cap off the panel. Thank you to our panelists. Really appreciate all the insights that you shared today. Thanks so much.
Thanks, Ryan.
Thanks for having us.
Take care. All right, so we're almost done for today. As announced before, though, we do have a prize to give out here. We're going to draw one attendee who wins a 1-year digital subscription to PV Magazine. So let's go ahead and spin the wheel and find out who our winner is. Frank Shaw, you've won a 1-year digital subscription for PV Magazine. We'll be in touch with you on how to access that. And thanks for tuning in today. So that concludes day 1 of PV Magazine USA Week. We've learned about project resilience, portfolio prioritization, best practices for meeting tax credit deadlines, and the road ahead in the post-tax credit environment. I want to thank all of our speakers and panelists for taking the time today to share your expertise with our audience. And thank you to our partners, our lead partner, Create Energy, platinum partner, Trinasolar, and our gold partners, Intertech CEA, Q-Cells, and REC Group, some of which who you'll hear from later in our 3-day event. And also special thanks to the PV Magazine team, both here in the US and in Berlin, who are working hard behind the scenes to make the event possible. So please join us tomorrow, day 2. We're going to be talking about navigating the US supply chain, looking at both domestically produced solar components as well as imports in the whole supply chain perspective. Taking place tomorrow, we'll explore the challenges of the supply chain, the push towards U.S. manufacturing, and the navigation of trade restrictions and compliance like FIAC and some of the things that we mentioned today. Attendees will walk away with a better understanding of the U.S. solar supply chain landscape. We'll review new trade restrictions, FIAC, UFLPA, tariffs, AD/CVD, and more. We have a great panel that really touches on all of the different legs of procurement and delivering projects and supplying components. Our keynote speaker is Keith Martin from Norton Rose Fulbright. He's going to walk us through the latest in federal policy and the trade and tariff considerations that we just mentioned there. And then we'll have panelists from ANZA, Intertech CEA, and REC Group. They'll share their insights on procuring equipment in the U.S. Market and the outlook for domestic manufacturing. So be sure to tune in tomorrow, same time, and we're looking forward to seeing you then. Thanks very much.